I remember my first day at Empire Financial. New heels, stiff blazer, a degree that still smelled like late nights and ramen dinners. The lobby was all marble and glass, polished to a shine that screamed money. And I told myself, Amani, you made it, you fought your way here. Every sleepless night in that little Harlem apartment brought you to this moment. But reality hit quick. From the jump, I wasn't just the new analyst. I was the black girl in the room. And they never let me forget it. In meetings, I'd pitch an idea. Clear, solid, numbers tight, silence. Then 5 minutes later, some dude repeated my point word for word. And suddenly the table lit up. Brilliant, Ethan. Great catch, Ethan. And I'd sit there thinking, it was brilliant when I said it too. But that's corporate America. Your work doesn't speak for itself when your skin already speaks before you open your mouth. They didn't call me confident. They called me aggressive, not detail-oriented, picky, not ambitious, too much. Every compliment I earned came with a warning label. And here's the thing, most of these people, they looked like me. Marcus Caldwell, the senior VP, black man in $1,000 suits. Sharon Johnson from HR, black woman. Cool smile, watchful eyes. Even Tasha from admin, single mom from Queens. It wasn't just white walls shutting me out. Sometimes, it was our own people holding the door half closed. See, survival in corporate isn't just about talent. It's about keeping your seat safe. And some folks survive by making sure you never sit beside them. The microaggressions piled up. Amani, tone it down, don't sound so intense. Amani, smile more. Clients like that. Amani, you're smart, but you don't want to scare people. Scare people? I was 27, running numbers tighter than men twice my age. The only thing scary was how much they wanted me to shrink. At first, I thought maybe it was me. Maybe I was too sharp, too direct, so I softened my tone, cut my words shorter, nodded more in meetings. But the smaller I made myself, the more invisible I became. That's when I realized, there's no winning in being less. Not for women like me. Not for black women in corporate America. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. She worked 2 jobs, feet swollen, still humming gospel under her breath when she came home. She used to tell me, baby, you gone, have to fight twice as hard just to get half as far. But you fight anyway. I believed her. That's why I pushed through school. Through rejection letters. Through every locked door until I kicked one open. And now, I was finally inside. But the fight wasn't over. Empire Financial looked like power and progress. But behind the shine it was favoritism. Backroom deals. Brothers protecting brothers. Sisters looking away. It wasn't about talent. It was about loyalty. And I wasn't loyal to Marcus. That put a target on my back. Every night on the 2 train home, I'd sit with my laptop, rewriting decks, polishing reports until my eyes blurred. And deep down, I knew, no matter how perfect my work, someone like me was always one mistake away from disposable. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't built to play their game. I was built for war. So I waited, I listened, I smiled when they underestimated me. And I promised myself one thing. When the time came, I wouldn't just defend my place. I'd flip the whole damn table. Len Y2 Die 4 to 5 Trang A4 Lean Mach Font Times New Roman 12. Ngoy Tu Nyat, Phong Cash Corporate Revenge, Workplace Drama. Nhip K Dean and New Hollywood Nung Gon Gui Voi Con Gia Black American. Chat GPT Da Noi. Doi De La Y2. Viet Lean Mach, Du Dai Tuong Duong 4 to 5 Trang A4, Font Times New Roman. Co 12, Ngoy Tu Nyat, Phong Cash Corporate Revenge, Workplace Drama. Nhip K Dean An. Gon Gui Voi Con Gia Black American. Noi Dung Noi Teep Y1 Mata Da Trian Kai. Amani Corporate Drama 2. The morning after that tense meeting, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest. The kind that makes you lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how you even got here. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. The clock on the nightstand said 6:17 a.m., but my mind was already racing. Malik's smirk from the day before still lingered in my head like a shadow I couldn't shake. And Denise, sitting there with her calm voice, acting like she had my best interests at heart. when I knew she was only protecting the system that fed her. I got dressed slow that morning. Black blazer, sharp as a blade, hair pulled back into a sleek bun. If they were going to come for me, I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Walking into that office, I needed to look like I belonged, like I owned every step. The elevator ride up felt longer than usual. Every ding of the floor numbers echoed like a warning bell. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into the hallway, heels clicking against the polished floor, each step carrying a message. I'm still here. The office buzzed around me, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, whispers traveling faster than email. People glanced up when I walked by, their eyes darting away just as quickly, like guilt lived in their pupils. Malik's voice carried across the floor before I even saw him. Loud, charismatic, the kind of tone that makes folks laugh even when the joke ain't funny. He was holding court near the coffee station. A group gathered around him like he was some kind of king. When his eyes caught mine, that grin widened. He didn't say my name, but the way his crew chuckled told me I was the punchline. I wanted to snap back, to let him know I wasn't the one. But something in me whispered, not yet. Play it smart. Revenge isn't about the first strike, it's about the last. I turned my focus to the work in front of me. My desk, once a place of pride, now felt like a battlefield. Files stacked high, emails pouring in non-stop, deadlines moved up without warning. I knew Malik had a hand in it. He was good at making chaos look like coincidence. Every mistake, every missed detail, it would all fall back on me if I slipped. That was his game. Push me until I broke, then step over the pieces. But what he didn't realize was that I had been here before. Growing up, I watched my mama fight through jobs where she was overlooked, underpaid, and overworked, just because she was a black woman. I watched my uncle get passed over for promotions while training the very men who leapfrogged ahead of him. I learned early that in this world, survival wasn't just about working hard, it was about watching the moves around you, anticipating the play before it happened. And Amani Carter didn't come this far just to fold. At lunch, I sat alone in the cafeteria, but my eyes were working overtime. I noticed who Malik was cozying up to, who he whispered to when he thought no one was watching. Patterns started to emerge. There was Tanya from accounting, always nodding along to his stories. Jerome from IT, laughing a little too hard at his jokes. And then Denise from our, gliding past like she wasn't tethered to him. But I could see the way her body shifted slightly when she heard his voice. Connections, alliances, the kind you only see if you're really looking. I started a journal that night, not the kind where you write your feelings, but the kind where you collect receipts, times, dates, what was said, who was present. I wrote everything down, because I knew that if this war was going to be fought, my weapon wasn't going to be anger, it was going to be proof. Weeks passed, and the tension only grew. Malik's tactics became bolder. He started copying Denise on emails, subtly questioning my decisions, planting seeds of doubt. Are you sure this is the right direction, Amani? He'd write, CCing the whole team, or he'd drop by my desk unannounced, voice dripping with fake concern. Hey, just checking in. Need any help with that project? Don't want you to feel overwhelmed. His words said support, but his eyes said sabotage. And the worst part? Some of them were starting to believe him. I could feel the shift in the air. Colleagues who once greeted me with warmth now gave tight smiles, their conversations halting when I approached. The isolation was real, and it burned, but instead of breaking me, it sharpened me. Every slight, every betrayal, it was fuel. Then came the turning point. A client presentation, high stakes, the kind of deal that could elevate a career or end one. I had worked on it for weeks, research, data, strategy. It was airtight, but the night before the big day, files went missing from the shared drive. Slides I had crafted with precision were suddenly gone, replaced with half-finished drafts that made the whole project look sloppy. I knew exactly whose fingerprints were on it. I stayed in that office until 2 a.m., rebuilding everything from scratch. The cleaning crew passed by, giving me those knowing looks. The kind that said, we see you working twice as hard just to stand in the same spot. My eyes burned, my hands ached, but I refused to let Malik win. When I finally shut my laptop, the city outside was silent. The skyline lit up like it was daring me to keep going. The next morning, I walked into that boardroom ready. Malik was there, sitting at the far end, smug as ever. Denise too, her expression unreadable. The clients filed in, shaking hands, taking their seats. My heart was pounding, but my face didn't show it. When the projector flickered to life, I took a deep breath and began. For the next 40 minutes, I owned that room. My voice was steady, my slides clean, my strategy airtight. Every question they threw my way, I caught and sent back sharper. By the end, the clients were nodding, impressed, leaning in closer. I could see Malik shifting in his seat, that smile of his cracking at the edges. When it was over, applause broke out. The deal was sealed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But deep down, I knew this wasn't victory, it was just a battle won. Malik wasn't done, and neither was I. As I packed up my things, Denise approached me, her voice low. Amani, that was impressive. Her eyes lingered a second too long, like she was trying to read me, figure out how I pulled it off. I gave her a polite smile, but inside, I was already 3 moves ahead. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war, and I was done playing defense. The weeks after the client presentation were like walking on a tightrope, every step balanced between triumph and downfall. On the surface, I was winning. The project had brought in praise from leadership, and the clients sent glowing feedback with my name front and center. But beneath that shine, the shadows were growing. Malik wasn't licking his wounds, he was plotting. I could feel it in the way the office shifted. Tanya from accounting stopped making small talk in the mornings. Jerome from IT suddenly had system issues whenever I needed his help. And Denise, well, she still wore that polished smile, but her eyes told a different story. It was like they were circling wagons, pulling tighter, waiting for the right moment to close in. One Friday evening, when most folks had already packed up for the weekend, I was still at my desk, combing through reports. That's when I overheard Malik's voice drifting from the conference room. Low but urgent. I moved quietly, standing just close enough to catch the words. "She's making me look bad," he hissed. "Every time she steps up, leadership forgets my contributions. We need to put her in a corner, make her untrustworthy." Denise's voice followed, calm and smooth. "Then we find the right narrative. Nobody survives long here without support. If she's painted as difficult, leadership won't care how good her work is." A chair scraped against the floor, and I backed away before they spotted me. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from clarity. Now I knew exactly what game they were playing. They weren't just trying to slow me down, they were trying to erase me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my journal open, pen moving fast, dates, names, overheard conversations, every subtle sabotage, every backhanded email. I was building something bigger than a diary now. This was evidence, and I wasn't just gathering it for me. I was building a case, one brick at a time. Still, carrying that weight was lonely. The next week, I reached out quietly to a colleague I trusted, Alicia, a senior analyst who had always given me straight talk. We grabbed coffee outside the office, away from the walls that seemed to have ears. When I told her everything, Malik's games, Denise's cover, the way the others played along, she sighed deeply. "Amani, I believe you. I've seen the way they move," she said, her voice low but steady. "But you gotta be careful. If you come at them without backup, they'll crush you." Her words stung, but they also lit something inside me. Backup, that's what I needed. Not allies in the office, because most of them were already compromised, but allies higher up. The kind who cared about results and reputation more than office politics. Opportunity came faster than I expected. Leadership announced an internal audit, one of those periodic check-ins to make sure projects, budgets, and teams were aligned. For most people, it was routine. For me, it was a spotlight. If I could lay out my track record clearly, if I could prove my consistency, then their narrative about me being difficult or unreliable would start to crack. The weeks leading to the audit were brutal. Malik ramped up the pressure, emails questioning my numbers, last-minute meeting changes designed to catch me off guard. Denise started whispering in hallways, conveniently within earshot of the right people. Tanya and Jerome? They played their roles, spreading doubt like it was gospel. But instead of breaking, I leaned harder into my receipts. Every spreadsheet double-checked, every email backed up, every task documented with precision. The night before the audit, I sat alone in the office again. The glow of the city poured in through the windows, reflecting off the glass like silent witnesses. My journal lay open beside me, pages thick with ink. For the first time, I didn't just see it as a collection of struggles, I saw it as power. A map of every move they made against me, and every way I fought back. When the auditors arrived, the air in the office shifted. People straightened up, smiles plastered on, voices dipped into that fake professional sweetness. Malik strutted around, trying to charm, while Denise hovered close, ready to clean up any slip. But when it was my turn, I stepped forward with calm I didn't even know I had. My reports were clear, my data spoke louder than any rumor. And when they asked about project delays or missteps, I was ready, with receipts that traced exactly where the interference had come from. Without naming names outright, let them connect the dots themselves. By the end of the week, whispers started to shift. The auditors praised my work ethic, noted my consistency, highlighted my leadership under pressure. Malik's swagger dimmed just a little, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Denise? She kept her composure, but I saw the flicker of something behind her mask, concern. One evening, as I was packing up, Malik cornered me by the elevators. His grin was tight, his voice low. You think you're smart, huh? You think you can outplay me? I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. I don't think. Malik, I know. And the difference between us? I don't have to tear people down to win. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped in without looking back. My reflection stared at me in the mirrored walls. And for the first time, I saw not just survival, but strategy. This wasn't the end. The war wasn't over, but the board had shifted, and the pieces were in motion. And Amani Carter? She was done playing defense. It was time to flip the game. The Monday after the audit results came in, the office felt different. It wasn't loud or obvious, just quieter glances. Longer pauses when I walked by. People who once smirked behind Malik's backslaps now studied me like they weren't sure whose side they should be on anymore. For the first time in a long while, the balance of power was shifting, and everyone could feel it. But Malik, he didn't back down. If anything, he doubled down. That's who he was. Never admit defeat. Just pivot to the next scheme. And Denise? She stayed close at his side, smooth and collected, like the HR queen she believed herself to be. They weren't done with me. Not by a long shot. The next storm came disguised as opportunity. Leadership announced a new initiative, a cross-departmental project with high visibility. Whoever led it would be positioned for promotion, maybe even a seat at the executive table. I knew immediately this was the next battlefield. And sure enough, Malik's name was floated within hours. Denise whispered that he had the charisma to unite teams. But then, to everyone's surprise, including mine, my name came up too. One of the senior partners had seen my performance during the audit and pushed me forward as a contender. The room split. Some nodded in agreement. Others, the ones Malik had charmed, resisted hard. What followed was a tense week of closed-door discussions. Alliances shifting like sand. Finally, the announcement came. Malik and I would co-lead. It was supposed to be a compromise. In reality, it was a setup. Two rivals tied to the same project, forced to work side by side. Everyone knew it would either end in brilliance, or in blood. From day one, Malik made his intentions clear. He smiled in meetings, but his moves told the truth. He cut me off mid-sentence, rephrasing my points as if they were his. He assigned critical tasks to Tanya and Jerome, ensuring I'd have limited visibility when deadlines came. And Denise? She floated above it all, claiming neutrality, but I saw her fingerprints on every HR memo that conveniently cast Malik's work in a brighter light. I kept my cool. On the surface, I played the role of the professional partner. I nodded, I listened, I let Malik have his moments. But behind the scenes, I documented everything, every meeting note, every draft, every timeline adjustment. My journal wasn't just words anymore, It had grown into a digital archive. Backed up and encrypted. If Malik wanted a war, I was building my arsenal. The project itself was demanding. Late nights. High stakes. Pressure from leadership. We were tasked with designing a new client integration system. Something that would streamline processes and save millions. Malik thrived on the spotlight, pitching big ideas in flashy presentations. But when it came time to execute, he faltered. His charm couldn't fill in gaps where real strategy was needed. That's where I shined. Quietly, methodically, I built the backbone of the project. The parts that actually held everything together. It didn't take long before cracks started to show. Tanya missed key deadlines. Jerome's system issues returned at the worst possible times. Malik blamed external factors, throwing jargon around to cover up the holes. But leadership wasn't blind. They saw the difference between the sizzle and the steak. And though they didn't say it outright, I could feel their eyes landing on me more and more. The breaking point came 3 weeks before launch. We had a critical presentation with the executive board, a rehearsal for the final rollout. Malik insisted on leading, brushing off my suggestions with that same smug grin. He strutted into the boardroom, slides polished, voice booming. For the first 10 minutes, it almost worked. Heads nodded, pens scratched notes. Then came the questions. Hard questions. Numbers that didn't add up. Strategies that lacked detail. Malik stammered, his charm cracking under the weight of logic. Silence filled the room, heavy and dangerous. That's when I stepped in. Calm, steady, prepared. I answered each question with precision. Pulling up data, walking through scenarios. My voice didn't waver. By the time I finished, the room had shifted completely. Executives leaned forward, engaged, nodding with genuine approval. Malik sat frozen beside me, his face tight, his hands clenched under the table. Afterward, in the hallway, he cornered me again. You think you can embarrass me in there? His voice was low, sharp. I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't embarrass you, Malik. You did that yourself. He stared at me for a long second, jaw tight, before storming off. Denise appeared moments later, her expression unreadable. Amani, leadership was impressed. She said softly, but be careful. Nobody likes a star that shines too bright. Her words were meant as a warning, maybe even a threat, but I took them as confirmation. I was breaking through their glass ceiling. And they knew it. That night, walking home through the city streets, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, momentum. For so long, I'd been on defense, dodging blows, patching up wounds. Now, I was the one setting the pace. Malik and Denise could scheme all they wanted. But the truth was this. Every move they made only sharpened me, forced me to rise higher. And deep down, I knew, we were heading for the collision. The kind you don't walk away from unchanged. The war wasn't over, not even close, but the board was tilting, the pieces rearranging. And me? Amani Carter was ready to finish what they started. By the time the project entered its final stretch, I could feel the air in the office thickening, like a storm rolling in from a distance. Everyone pretended things were normal, coffee runs, fake laughs, polite hallway greetings, but beneath it all was tension. You could hear it in the pauses, see it in the glances. And at the center of it all, like snakes coiled in tall grass, were Malik and Denise. They had been quiet since the last board presentation. Too quiet. Malik no longer strutted through the office like he owned the place. But his silence wasn't surrender, it was calculation. Denise moved softer too, her polished smiles tighter, her footsteps more deliberate. I knew they were cooking something. And I knew I had to be ready. The first hit came in the form of an email. A long thread, filled with cherry-picked details and half-truths, painting me as disorganized, difficult to collaborate with, resistant to feedback. Malik was careful with his words, never outright accusing me, but weaving enough doubt to make leadership pause. Denise, of course, was CC'd, her professional comments sprinkled throughout, reinforcing the picture. By the time it landed in my inbox, half the leadership team had already seen it. I didn't take the bait. Not in public, I replied calmly, attaching files, timelines, proof, no defensiveness, no anger, just receipts. But inside, my blood boiled. They weren't just questioning my work anymore. They were questioning my character. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the city lights. My journal lay open, pages stacked with months of evidence. Every email, every manipulation, every whisper I'd written down was staring back at me. And for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every black woman who had been painted as difficult just for standing her ground. For every person who had been pushed out of a room they earned the right to sit in. Malik and Denise thought they were writing my ending. But they didn't realize I had already started writing theirs. The second hit came in person. It was late, after most of the office had emptied out. I was at my desk, headphones in, when I felt a shadow fall over me. Malik. He leaned on the edge of my desk, that grin back on his face. You know, Amani, he said, voice smooth like poison. You're good, I'll give you that, but you're making enemies faster than you're making allies. That's not a sustainable strategy. I pulled out my headphones slowly, keeping my eyes on him. Funny, I thought my strategy was results. And last I checked, results don't need allies, they speak for themselves. His smile tightened. You keep thinking that. But in this place, narrative beats results every time. And we control the narrative. He didn't even bother to hide it. Malik and Denise weren't just allies, they were co-conspirators. And in that moment, I understood the full scope of the game. They weren't trying to outwork me. They were trying to bury me. The following week, things escalated. Tanya from accounting accidentally misplaced invoices tied to my portion of the project. Jerome from IT claimed my access had been revoked, by mistake, locking me out of key files just days before deadlines. Each time, Malik swooped in with that fake helpfulness, fixing the issues while quietly implying I wasn't on top of things. Denise? She kept her hands clean, floating above the mess, but her fingerprints were everywhere. HR memos questioning project morale. Feedback surveys suddenly filled with anonymous comments about my abrasive leadership style. The setup was meticulous, but what they didn't know was that I had already anticipated this. Every file they tried to erase, I had backed up. Every change they tried to make, I had tracked. My journal wasn't just ink on paper anymore, it was screenshots, documents, recordings, timestamps. I had built a fortress of truth. And every attack they launched only made it stronger. The breaking point came during a leadership check-in. Malik presented first, his slides full of flash, his tone dripping confidence. Denise chimed in strategically, painting him as a stabilizing force, the kind of leader the project needed. Then it was my turn. I walked them through the real progress, the numbers, the deliverables, the outcomes that actually mattered. The room listened, engaged, nodding. But then, one of the executives leaned back and asked the question I knew had been planted. Amani, there have been concerns about your ability to collaborate. How do you respond to that? The room went still. Malik's grin widened just enough for me to see. Denise folded her hands neatly, eyes fixed on me. This was their moment. The narrative they had crafted, delivered on a silver platter. I took a breath, steadying myself. I respond with facts, I said, pulling up records on the screen. Here are the timelines I've met ahead of schedule. Here are the deliverables signed off by clients. Here are the collaborations documented with team members across departments. Slide after slide, receipt after receipt. I dismantled their story. My voice was calm, unshaken. If collaboration means accepting sabotage, then no, I don't collaborate with that. What I do is deliver results and protect the integrity of this company's work. Silence followed, heavy. Then, slowly, nods spread around the table. One executive cleared his throat. Thank you, Amani. That was thorough. Malik's jaw tightened. Denise's mask cracked for just a second. I had landed a hit. And they felt it. That night, as I walked out of the building, the city air felt different. Lighter. I wasn't naive. I knew Malik and Denise weren't finished. They'd come harder, sharper, more desperate. But for the first time, I didn't just feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was winning. And deep down, I knew the climax was coming. The kind of moment that would define not just my career, but my name. They wanted me erased. I was going to make sure I was remembered. The conference room felt colder than usual. Maybe it was the way the blinds cut sharp lines across the table. Or maybe it was the way Denise avoided my eyes when I walked in. Malik was already seated, suit pressed, tie perfect, his smile sharp enough to slice skin. He had that aura of someone convinced victory was already his. I sat down deliberately, like I was lowering myself into a chair carved for royalty. I didn't bother to greet him. Respect isn't owed, it's earned. Amani, he said smoothly, today is about clarity, about whether you're aligned with where this company is going. Leadership needs cohesion, not friction. Cohesion, that word again. Code for obedience, code for silence. Denise chimed in, her tone calm but clipped. The leadership team has expressed ongoing concerns. There's been talk of projects falling through because of internal conflict. We need to evaluate if your role here is sustainable. I let silence stretch, long enough that Denise shifted in her chair, long enough that Malik leaned forward, lips parting to press his advantage. That's when I spoke. Interesting, because last week, the COO asked me to personally oversee the Branson account. The account I turned to Malik, claimed was dead in the water. His smile faltered for just a second. Small, but enough. I pressed harder. And the week before that? Finance signed off on the cost-saving model I built, one that your projections underestimated by $2 million. So forgive me if I don't accept this little intervention at face value. The air thickened. Jerome, who had been unusually quiet, cleared his throat. Look, maybe we should step back. Amani's track record. Malik cut him off. Jerome, don't. We've all seen the pattern. She undermines. She plays lone wolf. This isn't sustainable. Pattern. That word stabbed. Because I knew what he was doing. Building a narrative. A lie dressed as truth. Repeated until it stuck. But I had my own narrative ready. Funny you mention patterns, Malik, because the pattern I see is you taking credit for other people's work, throwing partners under the bus, and hiding behind Denise every time your numbers fall short. His jaw clenched. Denise shifted again. Jerome looked away. This was it, the breaking point. The war no longer quiet. You want cohesion? I leaned forward, voice steady but sharp. Then start holding him accountable. Because I will not sit here and play scapegoat for someone who's been sabotaging me since day one. The room went silent. It was the kind of silence you feel in your chest. Heavy and vibrating. Malik's composure cracked, his voice rising just enough to betray him. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I do. I slid the folder from my bag onto the table. Thick, heavy, deliberate. Inside, emails, timestamped reports, receipts, proof of Malik's manipulations, half-truths, missing figures, and messages where he tried to pin delays on me while cozying up to clients behind closed doors. Denise froze. Jerome leaned forward, eyes wide. I didn't even open the folder. Just the sound of it hitting the table was enough. You wanted clarity, I said. Here it is. For the first time, Malik didn't have words. And in that silence, I knew the war had shifted. The day of the quarterly board meeting felt like Judgment Day. The whole 23rd floor buzzed with tension. Assistants scurried. Printers spat out last-minute reports. And the air was thick with perfume and nerves. For me, it was something else, calm, deliberate, almost serene, because I knew what was coming. Malik thought this was his coronation. I could see it in the way he strutted around the office. Shaking hands, laughing too loud, as if the CEO's chair had already molded itself to his frame. Denise shadowed him closely, whispering, steering, feeding him her quiet confidence. They looked unstoppable, but power built on lies always crumbles. And I'd spent weeks collecting every crack in their foundation. When the boardroom doors opened, I walked in steady, heels sharp against the wood, folder in hand, not the messy pile of papers Malik used to toss at interns. No, this was sleek, ordered, undeniable. The room smelled of money, polished wood, leather chairs, the faint cologne of men who'd signed billion-dollar deals before breakfast. The CEO, Mr. Whitaker, sat at the head of the table. He was old school, silver hair, piercing blue eyes, the kind of man who didn't waste time with excuses. Let's get started, he said. Malik rose first, of course. Slides cued, voice polished like he'd practiced in the mirror all night. He painted pictures of growth, expansion, seamless leadership. every word designed to position himself as the savior of this company. Denise sat tall beside him, her expression calm, her eyes sharp. This was their pitch for control. And for a moment, I could see the board leaning in. Nods, murmurs, a few raised eyebrows of approval. Malik had always been good in the spotlight. He knew how to bend numbers until they bowed to his narrative. But the truth has a weight that lies can't carry forever. When he finished, I waited just long enough for the applause to die. Then I stood. My turn. The room shifted. A few surprised glances. A few smirks. Like they expected me to crumble under Malik's shine. I placed my folder on the table and opened it slowly. Each page crisp, each movement deliberate. While Malik presented a vision, I began. I'd like to present facts. Slide by slide, I walked them through the Branson account. The real numbers, the email chains, the projections Malik had doctored, compared against the unedited originals Tanya had slipped to me. My voice was steady, low but clear, every word sinking like a stone in water. Here, I said, pointing at the screen, is the email Malik sent the client, without copying anyone else, promising deliverables he knew we couldn't meet. And here, I flipped to another document, is the report he presented internally, blaming delays on my team. Except the timestamp shows his numbers were altered after the fact. A murmur rippled through the board. Mr. Whitaker leaned forward, steepling his hands. Malik's face paled, then flushed deep red. That's not accurate, he started. But I cut him off. Oh, it's accurate. I have every original file backed up on the company server. If you'd like, IT can confirm. I turned the knife. And Denise, I said, locking eyes with her, approved each of these altered reports. Her signature is right here. Which means she either missed the discrepancies, or she helped cover them. The silence was electric. Denise shifted, finally rattled, her calm veneer cracking just enough for everyone to see. I closed the folder with a snap. This isn't just about me, or Malik, or Denise. It's about integrity, about whether this company rewards lies or values truth. Because if deception gets crowned in this room today, then every client we've worked years to build will feel it, and they won't trust us again. For a long beat, no one moved. Then Jerome, quiet, careful Jerome, spoke up. She's right, I've seen the same patterns. Malik's been reckless, and Denise has been covering for him. That broke the dam. Other board members chimed in, questions, concerns, outright frustration. The tide had turned, and Malik knew it. His confident mask crumbled into something raw, desperate. Amani, he hissed, low enough for only me to hear. You think you've won? You don't know who you're messing with. I leaned in, voice like steel. I know exactly who I'm messing with. That's why you're finished. Mr. Whitaker finally spoke, effective immediately. Malik, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Denise, the same applies to you. His eyes turned to me. Amani, thank you for reminding us what leadership should look like. The gavel hit, metaphorical but final. Malik shoved back his chair, his face twisted with fury. But the fight was gone. Denise followed, silent for once, her heels clicking sharp and lonely down the hall. I sat back down, not smiling, not gloating, just steady, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival, about showing every black woman who'd ever been told she was too much, or not enough, that the truth could cut sharper than any knife. As the room emptied, Tanya slipped in, catching my eye. She gave the slightest nod, a quiet acknowledgement that we'd done it, that I'd turned their war into their funeral. And for the first time in months, I let myself breathe, not because the battle was over, but because I'd won it on my terms. The day after Malik and Denise were escorted out, the office was quieter than I had ever known it. Their absence wasn't just physical, it was like someone had cut the static from the air. No whispered schemes, no side glances dripping with suspicion. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to keep my back pressed to the wall. But victory doesn't mean the fight is over. I knew there'd be whispers. Folks wondering if Amani Carter had played too hard, if I'd gone too far exposing Malik and Denise. That's the way it goes for us, isn't it? When we fight for survival, they call it aggression. When we protect ourselves, they call it ambition. And when we win, they call it luck. But I knew the truth. I hadn't been lucky. I'd been prepared. The following week, Mr. Whitaker called me into his office. Sunlight streamed across his mahogany desk, catching the edges of the photographs on his wall, family portraits. Fishing trips. Decades of legacy. You've shown remarkable strength, Amani, he said, but more than that, you've shown integrity. The board wants you to take on a bigger role. Leadership isn't just about vision, it's about courage. For a moment, I let that sink in. Courage. It wasn't the first time I'd heard the word, but this time it carried weight. Because courage wasn't just standing up to Malik. It was every day I'd walked into this building knowing I had to be twice as good, twice as careful, just to get half the recognition. I accepted, not with fireworks or fanfare, but with a steady voice. I'll do it, but I'm going to lead differently. People need to know they can trust us again. In the weeks that followed, I saw small shifts. Tanya's ideas started getting airtime in meetings. Jerome, freed from Malik's shadow, began contributing in ways I hadn't seen before. Younger analysts, some who looked like me, some who didn't, came to my office. Quiet but hopeful, asking for mentorship. And that's when it hit me. My victory wasn't just mine. Every door I kicked open wasn't just for me. It was for every black woman watching. Every young analyst who thought their voice didn't matter. Every professional who'd been told to sit down and stay quiet. The emails came too. Strangers. Colleagues in other firms. Even folks I hadn't spoken to in years. Saw what you did. Proud of you. Keep going. The community was watching, rooting, claiming the win alongside me. One Friday evening, I stayed late, the city lights glowing against the glass. Tanya leaned on my doorframe, arms crossed, that sly smile of hers back in place. You really did it, she said. We did it, I corrected. She laughed. You know, they're gonna talk about this for a long time. You took them down without raising your voice. That's power. Power. The word sat with me long after she left. Because real power isn't about crushing others, it's about making space. About ensuring the truth can breathe, even in rooms built to suffocate it. Looking back now, I don't frame this as revenge. Revenge is short-lived. What I built was bigger, justice. A reminder that no matter how polished the lies, no matter how powerful the people behind them, truth has a way of surfacing. And if my story teaches anything, it's this. Sparkles don't let them write you out of your own narrative. Sparkles don't shrink yourself to fit their comfort. Sparkles, and when the time comes, don't be afraid to lay your receipts on the table. Because survival is one thing, but thriving? That's the real legacy. I walked out of the building that night, the city humming around me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. The war was over. The battlefield behind me. Ahead was something else, something wider, brighter, something worth passing on. And as I stepped into the night, I thought about every black woman who'd ever been told to wait her turn, to swallow her truth, to stay small. To them, I say, your turn is now. Your voice is enough. And your story? It's powerful. Always has been. Always will be.